You ever get that feeling? You're ticking boxes, maybe even hitting some goals, but there's this quiet hum of dissatisfaction,
Mm-hmm.
like a forgotten melody you can almost recall. Our author, Bryan Collins, he kicks off the power of creativity in that exact space.
Yeah, that opening is really relatable.
Totally. 30 years old, a hangover, staring at the bathroom tiles, and just this stark realization that the childhood dream of writing feels, well, light years away. Anyone else been there?
I think what's fascinating here is just how universal that feeling is. Whether you're
Hmm.
in a traditionally creative field or, something entirely different,
Right.
that sense of something missing, it can be a powerful catalyst. Collins' experience gives us a really relatable entry point into how we can all tap into our innate creativity, no matter our background.
It makes you wonder, what are we all leaving unexpressed?
Exactly.
So this deep dive is all about unlocking that untapped potential, finding real strategies to chase those passions that get buried under the daily grind and, let's face it, the things we're afraid of.
hmm Fear is a big one.
We're diving deep into Colin's book to pull out the crucial steps on this journey, from figuring out where our creative sparks even come from
Yeah, the
to
roots.
building the mental toughness to
Yeah.
keep that fire burning. Think of it as like your personal toolkit for reigniting that pilot light.
And it's a toolkit focused on action, which I think is so important. It's not just, lofty ideas about
Well, yeah,
creativity.
not just theory.
No, it's about tangible steps you can actually start taking today. We'll explore how to build a strong foundation for creative growth,
Okay.
how to connect with your work and maybe even an audience, how to cultivate the inner resilience for the long haul, and, crucially, how to face down those fears that so often slam the door on our creative impulses.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Starting at the beginning, laying that foundation,
Hmm?
Collins talks about the importance of self-reflection right away, using this idea of a mirror. What's the core insight there?
Well, the core insight, it's that our own perspective really shapes what we see and what we believe is possible. Kind of like what Aeneas Nin said, right?
Hmm.
To truly understand what fuels our creative desires, we need to take a really honest look at ourselves, our past experiences, our motivations, the things that genuinely resonate with us.
So stripping away the shoulds.
Exactly. This self-reflection is the essential first step because it helps us identify what's authentically us rather than what we think we should be interested in or pursuing.
And from that honest look comes this idea of tracing our creative roots. What does that actually involve? Why dig into that?
Tracing your creative roots means looking back, like really looking back at what genuinely sparked your curiosity and joy in those early years.
Okay.
For Collins, it was reading Roald Dahl and this powerful early desire he had to become a writer.
Ah, yeah.
Understanding these formative inclinations can reveal these enduring themes and passions that still resonate deep down. It's about reconnecting with that uninhibited part of yourself,
Before the world got in the way.
pretty much,
Yeah.
before you started worrying about external validation or limitations. Recognizing these roots provides a really powerful and personal source of motivation.
Right. It's about remembering what made you feel alive. And this then leads to crafting a personal mission statement. Now, for some folks, that might sound a bit, I don't know, corporate.
Yeah, it can sound like jargon, that's fair. We often associate mission statements with businesses,
Hmm.
but at its heart, a personal mission statement provides a sense of direction and, maybe more importantly, a source of motivation, especially when things get uncertain.
Okay.
Collins himself used this process when he was facing unemployment. It acts like your internal compass, guiding your decisions and helping you stay oriented when you're facing setbacks or feeling a bit lost.
Like an anchor.
Or an oar, maybe. As Seneca wisely put it, when a man does not know what harbor he is making for, no wind is the right wind. It gives your creative journey a destination, even if the path isn't always clear.
Okay, so how do we actually go about crafting one of these personal mission statements? Collins breaks it down into 6 steps, right? Let's dig into those. First one, mapping life themes and work. What's the idea there?
So, this initial step is about taking a really broad inventory of your life so far. Think about recurring patterns, significant experiences, both good and bad.
The whole picture.
Yeah, and the kind of work in any area of your life that has truly resonated with you. It's like laying out all the key pieces of your life puzzle to see the bigger picture starting to emerge.
Visualizing it.
Right. Collins even suggests doing this on like a large piece of paper to really visualize these connecting themes.
Makes sense getting it all out there. The second step involves identifying creative role models.
Mm.
Who are these folks, and what should we be looking for in their stories?
Your creative role models are the individuals, living or deceased, whose work and lives genuinely inspire you.
Not just the highlights.
No, exactly. It's not just about admiring their finished products or their successes, but also understanding their journeys, the obstacles they navigated, the struggles they overcame, and what fundamentally drove their creative pursuits.
Mm.
Collins mentions people like Patti Smith, Matisse, Picasso, all artists with a really clear sense of purpose guiding their work.
Okay.
By exploring their biographies and understanding their motivations, we can extract really valuable insights that can inform our own creative path. It's like having a masterclass in resilience and dedication, even if you never meet them.
Okay, step 3. Asking clarifying questions. What kind of questions are we talking about here? What's the goal?
These are the really probing questions, the ones that help you get beneath the surface and define your personal values and aspirations on a deeper level.
Going deeper than just, what do I like?
Exactly. Moving beyond just surface-level desires to really understand what truly matters to you. Collins references Joseph Campbell's later thought, follow your blisters.
Oh, interesting phrase.
Yeah, it suggests that true passion often involves some discomfort and challenge, right?
Hmm.
So these questions could explore what genuinely brings you joy, what problems you feel compelled to solve, or what kind of impact you ultimately want to have. It's about digging deep to uncover your core drivers.
That idea of follow your blisters really hits home. It's not always comfortable, is it? Growth.
Not at all.
Step 4 is considering the wider canvas. What does that entail?
This step encourages you to really think big picture, to envision your life goals and potential impact over the long term.
The grand vision.
Sort of. Consider what you would create if you had unlimited time and resources, but importantly, it also involves thinking about the practical realities.
Ah, the compromises.
Yeah, the compromises you might need to make along the way, and even what happens after you achieve a major goal. Collins uses the example of Glenn Hansard.
From the frames. Once.
Yeah, who experienced a period of feeling lost after winning an Oscar. It highlights the importance of considering the broader implications of our ambitions and having a sense of purpose beyond just a single achievement.
Right, what happens after the confetti settles?
Exactly. It's about painting a full and nuanced picture of your life and creative aspirations, not just focusing on one isolated peak moment.
Okay, thinking beyond the immediate win. Step 5 is consolidating information into core principles. How do we distill all that exploration into something usable?
Right. This is where you take all the insights you've gathered from the previous steps, the themes, the role models, the answers to those deep questions, and you synthesize them.
Boil it down.
Yeah, into a set of core beliefs or guiding principles that will inform your creative endeavors. Start with simple statements like, I believe, or I am most fulfilled when.
Keep it simple.
The goal is to create a concise statement or even a personal mantra that you can regularly come back to. Collins mentions Robert Mapplethorpe's very direct mission, live for art.
Wow, succinct.
It's about finding the essence of what drives you and articulating it in a clear and memorable way.
And finally, step 6 is all about putting the mission statement into practice.
Yeah.
How do we make sure it's not just a nice document that gathers dust?
This is the crucial part, right? Where the theory becomes reality. Your mission statement needs to actively inform your goal setting, your daily actions, your long-term decisions.
Make it live.
Exactly. It should be a living document that you revisit and refine as you evolve. Collins stresses the importance of taking consistent action, not just knowing what you want.
Action over just words.
Definitely. He even shares a rather grounding but ultimately motivating response from a friend to his own mission statement. You've a long way to go before you get there.
Keeps you honest.
Totally. Your mission statement is the oar. Now you actually have to start rowing.
So, having laid that groundwork, that personal foundation, Collins moves on to engaging with our craft and our audience. He starts by challenging this often romanticized image of the lone, isolated artist. Why tackle that myth?
Oh, it's such an important point, because the myth of the solitary genius toiling away in complete isolation can be really misleading, maybe even damaging.
How so?
Well, while periods of solitude can be incredibly valuable for initial brainstorming and focused practice, getting into the zone,
Sure.
real-world feedback is absolutely crucial for learning what your craft truly demands and what resonates with an audience if connecting with an audience is part of your goal.
Right. You need that reality check.
Yeah, without that external perspective, you risk creating something that exists solely within your own bubble and doesn't connect with others in the way you might hope, or even in the way it could connect.
And he brings up Thomas Edison's SALT test here. Seems like an odd example. What was that about? What's the takeaway for creatives?
Yeah, the SALT test. It was Edison's rather unconventional way he used to assess potential employees during interviews, apparently.
Okay.
He would watch to see if they seasoned their soup before even tasting it. If they did, he wouldn't hire them.
Seriously? Why?
He believed it indicated a mind that made assumptions without gathering information first. He highly valued open-mindedness and a willingness to assess a situation before jumping to conclusions.
Wow. So question your assumptions.
Exactly. It's a really memorable way to illustrate that crucial insight. Question your preconceptions in any creative endeavor. Don't assume you know what will work until you've actually tested it, or at least observed carefully.
Definitely makes you think twice before reaching for the salt shaker.
Yeah.
Or, launching a fully finished project without testing the waters.
Right. And that leads nicely into the concept of a minimum viable product, or MVP, in creative fields. For listeners maybe not familiar with that tech term, how does it apply here?
Yeah, MVP sounds very startup-y.
It does, but the core idea translates surprisingly well. Instead of aiming for a fully polished, perfect creation right out of the gate,
Which can be paralyzing.
totally paralyzing. The MVP approach is about developing a basic functional version of your creative idea, the most stripped down version that still delivers core value just to get it out there and gather feedback early on.
Before you invest tons of time and resources.
Precisely. In creative fields, this could look like a writer sharing early drafts, maybe just a chapter with a small group,
Okay.
a musician playing new songs in a raw live setting, or a painter showing unfinished pieces just to get reactions. Test the core concept.
And Collins gives examples like Hugh Howey with his Silo series, releasing it novella by novella.
Yeah, and Bob Dylan constantly rearranging his classic songs in concert.
Right. What do these different approaches tell us about the value of engaging with an audience, even in those varied ways?
Well, they both beautifully illustrate the power of iterative creation and being responsive in some way to an audience. Howie essentially built his audience by releasing his work in stages and directly gauging their interest and demand.
So he adjusted as he went.
It seems like it. And Dylan, well, in his constant reinterpretation of his own material, he shows a willingness to experiment and see what continues to connect with his listeners, even if it sometimes sparks debate among fans.
Yeah, true fans definitely notice.
It highlights that the relationship between creator and audience can be dynamic and evolving, even if the feedback isn't always, direct comments. It can be attention, engagement, sales.
Now, while getting that external perspective is clearly valuable, Collins also emphasizes tracking our internal creative progress. Why is keeping tabs on that unseen growth so important?
Because creative growth isn't always immediately visible to the outside world, is it?
No, definitely not.
Your audience, if you have one, might only see the final product. They don't see the countless hours of practice, the valuable lessons learned from mistakes, or the gradual development of your skills and your unique voice.
The messy middle.
Exactly. Keeping some kind of record of your progress, whether it's in a journal, a sketchbook, or even just mentally acknowledging your efforts, helps you recognize your own journey. It lets you celebrate those smaller milestones and stay motivated, especially when external validation is slow in coming, or maybe not coming at all. It's about acknowledging your own evolution.
He does make an important point, though, doesn't he? That sometimes, especially with very personal or experimental work, that external validation might not even be the primary goal.
Absolutely. That's a crucial distinction. If your creative work is driven purely by personal exploration and fulfillment, or if you feel you're venturing into entirely new territory that might not immediately resonate with a broad audience.
Like avant-garde stuff.
Yeah, or just something deeply personal. Then external validation becomes less of a driving force, or maybe not a force at all. History is full of examples of artists whose groundbreaking work was initially misunderstood or rejected, Right. like the early Impressionists, but later came to be recognized for its significance. Sometimes you just have to follow your own path, regardless of the immediate reception.
Okay, moving into part 3. Collins shifts focus a bit to cultivating inner strength and establishing helpful habits. He even challenges that stereotypical image of the struggling, unhealthy artist.
Yeah, the tortured genius trope.
Right. Why is that contrast so significant? What's the real link between well-being and creativity?
Because sustained creativity, the kind that lasts, really thrives on a healthy mind and, a reasonably healthy body.
Not burning the candle at both ends constantly.
Exactly. That romanticized image of the tortured, unhealthy artist, while it exists in some stories, often masks the reality that neglecting your well-being can actually hinder your ability to consistently produce your best work over the long term.
It catches up with you.
It really does. Collins points to Raymond Carver's later, very productive years after he overcame his struggles with addiction. It's a powerful example of how prioritizing your health can have a profoundly positive impact on your creative output and longevity.
And he specifically highlights practices like meditation and exercise. What are the specific connections he draws between these activities and the creative process itself?
Well, meditation, for instance, has been shown to significantly improve focus, concentration, and emotional regulation, all absolutely crucial elements for sustained creative work.
Quieting the noise.
Right. It helps quiet the internal chatter and allows for deeper concentration. And exercise, particularly endurance activities like running, can build discipline, mental resilience.
Sticking with it.
Yeah, and the ability to break down large, daunting tasks into smaller, more manageable steps, which, if you think about it, directly mirrors the creative process of tackling a big project.
That's a great parallel.
Collins mentions Haruki Murakami's well-known long-distance running routine as an example of how that physical discipline can fuel and support a consistent creative practice.
It's fascinating how those seemingly unrelated activities can have such a direct and positive impact. He also stresses the need to intentionally take breaks from screens and digital distractions. Seems obvious, but why is it so vital for nurturing creativity?
Well, it feels obvious, but it's so hard to do, right?
Hmm.
In our hyper-connected world, we're constantly bombarded with information and stimuli. This constant screen exposure can really overload our senses and fragment our attention spans.
Yeah, my attention span feels shorter.
Mine too. It makes it difficult to engage in the deep, focused thinking that creativity often requires. Taking deliberate breaks, stepping away, allows our minds to wander, to make unexpected connections between ideas.
The shower thoughts moment.
Exactly, or the long walk thoughts. It helps gain fresh perspectives on our work. It's often in those moments of mental downtime, away from the digital noise, that truly new and innovative ideas can emerge.
Okay, now this section also introduces the concept of side projects.
Mhm.
For our listeners, what exactly constitutes a side project in this context, and what makes them such a valuable tool?
A side project is essentially a creative endeavor that you pursue alongside your main work responsibilities. Often, the key is that it's low pressure.
No deadlines, no expectations.
Often, yeah. Or at least, much lower stakes. There isn't usually an immediate expectation of external validation or financial reward. It's something you do purely for the joy of exploration, maybe to experiment with new skills or to explore ideas that might not fit into your primary creative focus.
What kind of things count?
Collins offers a really broad range, actually, from something as simple as like writing haikus on spare envelopes
Okay.
to joining a band just for fun, learning an instrument, coding a simple app, knitting, gardening, lots of things. These projects provide a really valuable low-state space for creative exploration and development.
A playground.
Exactly. They offer a safe environment for experimentation without the high stakes or pressures that might come with your main creative work or your job.
Right.
Collins explains how side projects can foster a greater tolerance for ambiguity because you're not relying on them for anything critical.
Makes sense.
They encourage a more reckless generation of ideas, just throwing things out there without the fear of failure, and they provide a fantastic space to practice facing those creative fears in a context where the consequences feel much less significant.
Like a creative sandbox.
Perfect analogy, a sandbox where you can try things out without worrying too much about breaking anything important.
And he even talks about how these seemingly separate side projects can sometimes unexpectedly connect back to and enrich our main work. He uses Charles Bukowski as an example.
Yeah, Bukowski and his experiences working at the Postal Service, it's a really compelling example of cross-pollination.
How's that work?
Well, by engaging in different types of experiences and creative pursuits simultaneously, your mind can start to make surprising and often unexpected connections between seemingly unrelated areas.
Connecting the dots.
Right. Your day job, even if it feels mundane, can provide this rich source of characters, anecdotes, unique observations, stuff that can then be woven into your writing, your art, whatever your main thing is.
Like Bukowski did.
Exactly. His extensive use of his experiences as a postal worker in his raw and unflinching writing is a perfect illustration of how these seemingly disparate parts of your life can cross-pollinate and lead to really original and authentic creative output.
Okay, finally, we arrive at part 4. This tackles those ever-present creative fears. He lays out a whole spectrum of them, doesn't he?
He really does. The fear of starting,
Big one.
that gnawing feeling of not being good enough,
Yeah.
the anxiety of judgment, the strained hurdle of actually finishing something,
Counterintuitive, but real.
the fear of failure and rejection, obviously, and even the unexpected fear of success itself. It's a pretty comprehensive and, for many, probably a very relatable list.
It really is. And it shines a light on the significant psychological barriers that so many creators at all levels face.
These fears are often deeply ingrained, aren't they? Stemming from all sorts of sources, and they can be incredibly paralyzing.
Stopping you before you even start.
Or stopping you from finishing or sharing, preventing us from even beginning or from fully realizing our creative potential. Simply acknowledging and recognizing these fears, naming them, is often the crucial first step towards learning how to navigate them.
Right. You can't fight what you don't acknowledge.
Exactly.
Let's delve into some of these specific fears and the actionable strategies Collins suggests for conquering them. Starting with that often daunting fear of starting that blank page, empty canvas. It can feel incredibly intimidating. What's his practical advice?
For the fear of starting, Collins really emphasizes the power of simplifying and reducing friction, making it easier to just begin. He suggests eliminating non-essential distractions, maybe turning off notifications, closing browser tabs, that kind of thing.
Creating focus.
Yeah, establishing consistent mental triggers and routines to signal to your brain that it's time to focus and create, like always working at the same desk or starting with a specific ritual.
Training your brain.
And perhaps most importantly, focusing on taking very small incremental steps, even just committing to 10 minutes of focused work or writing a single paragraph.
Just one sentence sometimes.
Exactly. It can be enough to build momentum and help you break through that initial inertia. It's about making the starting point feel less overwhelming.
That makes perfect sense, breaking down the monumental into manageable chunks. What about that almost universal fear of simply not being good enough? That persistent inner critic.
Oh, that's a tough one. That particular fear often stems from comparing ourselves to others, right? And wrestling with deep-seated self-doubt.
The comparison trap.
Totally. Collins offers a powerful reminder here. Everyone, without exception, starts somewhere. Even the most accomplished masters experience those same feelings of inadequacy.
That's comforting, actually.
It is. He quotes Van Gogh's incredibly insightful advice. If you hear a voice within you say you cannot paint, then by all means paint and that voice will be silenced.
Wow. Pain anyway.
Yeah. The key is to recognize that negative self-talk is just thoughts, not necessarily facts. And crucially, to give yourself permission to create, regardless of your current perceived skill level. Action is often the most effective antidote.
Easier said than done sometimes, but a really important reminder. Okay, then there's the fear of judgment, what others might think of our work. How do we learn to handle that external scrutiny?
The fear of judgment often arises because we tend to tie our personal worth too closely to the creative work we produce.
If they hate my painting, they hate me.
Kind of, yeah.
They
That's
do.
the internal logic sometimes. Collins advises making a clear separation between the two. Criticism, when it comes, and it might, is about the work itself, about that specific creation.
Not about you as a person.
Right. It's not a reflection of your fundamental value as a human being. And honestly, the more you put your work out there, even in small ways, the better you'll gradually become at developing this necessary detachment. Practice helps build that thicker skin.
What about this seemingly strange fear of finishing a project? It sounds counterintuitive, but it seems to be a very real hurdle for many creators. Why would you fear finishing?
It does sound weird, doesn't it? But the fear of finishing can stem from a variety of sources, maybe a sense of loss or even emptiness when a long-term project you've poured yourself into comes to a close.
Like what now?
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe even a fear of what comes next, the judgment after it's finished, perhaps, or the pressure to start something new.
Okay. So how do you get past that?
Collins suggests breaking down larger projects into smaller, more readily finishable pieces. That can provide a sense of accomplishment along the way, making the final finish less daunting.
Little victories.
Right. He also mentions the idea of creating some healthy distance between yourself and the finished product. He uses Johnny Depp's approach of not rewatching his past films
Oh, well.
as an example of maintaining that separation. It allows for a fresh perspective and future growth without being overly attached to or defined by past creations.
Interesting tactic. Okay, and then we have the almost inevitable fear of failure and rejection. Feels inherently linked to putting any kind of personal work out into the world.
Absolutely. It's pretty much baked into the process, isn't it? Not every creative endeavor will be a resounding success, however you define success.
Nope.
Collins offers a really reassuring perspective here. He suggests viewing rejection as simply a natural part of the creative process. He compares unpublished work or unsuccessful projects to the slush pile that every artist inevitably accumulates.
Part of the job description.
Pretty much. Accepting that not everything you create will hit the mark or find its audience is absolutely crucial for building resilience and just continuing to create without being crippled by fear.
And interestingly, he also touches on the fear of success itself. How can success be scary? That seems like the goal. How do we navigate that unexpected anxiety?
It seems like the goal, but yeah, the fear of success can be rooted in a surprising number of anxieties. Perhaps a fear of the unknown changes that success might bring.
Like increased pressure.
Exactly. Pressure to maintain that level, maybe feeling like an imposter, like you don't truly deserve the achievement.
Imposter syndrome again.
Mm-hmm. Or even just fear of the attention or scrutiny that might come with it. Collins suggests adopting a mindset of already having achieved a certain level of success.
Fake it till you make it.
Sort of, but maybe more like embodying it. He mentions it as a psychological strategy reportedly used by chess champion Garry Kasparov to build confidence.
Interesting.
By embodying the persona of a successful creator in your mind, you can start to push past that underlying discomfort and more fully embrace the potential that lies ahead rather than shying away from it.
It really all seems to come back to pushing through those feelings, doesn't it? Even when those heavy paws of fear, as Colin so aptly puts it, are weighing us down.
Precisely. That's a great phrase he uses. He emphasizes that the struggle itself, the act of confronting and working through those fears, is where significant growth happens.
Not avoiding the fear.
No. True creative victory isn't about the absence of fear. It's about having the courage to keep moving forward despite its presence. Using it, maybe, but not letting it stop you.
So as we bring this deep dive into the power of creativity to a close, what's the central message or core insight that you take away from Bryan Collins' journey and these really practical strategies he lays out?
You know, the key takeaway for me is that creativity isn't some rare magical gift reserved for a select few. It's really a journey.
An ongoing process.
Yeah, a journey of continuous learning, ongoing self-awareness, and the consistent application of effort, even when we're facing internal and external challenges. Collins' own personal evolution, from that low point on his 30th birthday to actively pursuing his writing aspirations, it powerfully underscores the fact that lasting creative change is absolutely achievable.
Oh.
Through cultivating those daily habits we talked about, actively learning from the experiences of other creative individuals, the masters, and maybe just peers, and crucially, by consistently facing our fears, not letting them win.
And it sounds like that underlying passion, that initial spark we talked about right at the beginning, that's really the engine that fuels this entire process, right?
Exactly. Identifying what you are truly passionate about provides that essential intrinsic motivation. That's the fuel you need to keep going, to push through the inevitable obstacles and persevere, even when the path feels uncertain or, frankly, a bit lonely sometimes.
It can be lonely.
It definitely can be. And as Stephen King's experience shows, his wife fishing his manuscript for Carrie out of the bin, having unwavering support, whether it's from a mentor, a partner, or supportive community, can also make a profoundly significant difference.
That support system is key.
Hugely important in navigating those challenges.
So the creative path won't always be smooth. There will be stumbles, setbacks, maybe even some faceplants.
Probably.
But it's about embracing that journey, taking those small, consistent steps forward, and most importantly, not allowing those fears to keep us stuck in place.
That's absolutely right. It's about recognizing your own inherent creative strength and potential, which we all have, and then taking deliberate action. Consider this.
Yeah.
What's one small, even tiny step you can take today towards that creative pursuit that's been quietly calling to you? Maybe just thinking about it or writing down one idea.
Just one thing.
Yeah. That single act, however small it might seem, is truly the power of creativity being unleashed. That's the starting point.